This is going to be an installation of the Bushwacker front fender flares on an Excursion. It's going to be the same for any Superduty F250, F350. First, take the cut. It says in the instructions 2 inches above the edge of the fender. First, I'm just going to mark it off with electrical tape. Now it's going to have us mark an edge of the back corner of the fender. It'll be 8.5 inches up from the bottom and 3 3/8 inches up from the door, and then we'll blend it in. Once you get looking at the underside, there's 2 bolts and a screw. I found that if you go just in front of the rear bolt and blend it up there, it works out pretty good. You can see lower in the picture is the plastic inner fender. Now, previous installations, and again the other side of this one that I've already done, I like to take off the edge rib that's formed and then cut the relief cuts. It just makes it so when it's flexed up a little bit easier. We're going to trim every 3 inches relief cuts perpendicular to the body, so from the outside in every 3 inches. That will allow us to have some flex in that inner fender. There's also about 4 to 6 inch metal inner fender that will need to be trimmed. Now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to mark as close perpendicular as we can to the outer cut along the inner metal fender line. So we're going to try and transfer that outer radius to that inner metal. So what we've done is we've marked that radius with electrical tape, continue that blend line all the way down and then to the bottom of the fender. You'll notice now we still have some metal inner fender that needs to be marked and trimmed according to the radius of the outside line. And that's also going to continue in the back here with an inner fender piece that's going to need to be trimmed as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and trim that rear metal piece, that inner front fender piece. I've made my relief cuts, and then it's going to be moving on to just setting the fender in place and trying to get it lined up, seeing where I may need to make some other adjustments. And trimmed that portion in there, and we've also trim that back portion there. That's going to allow us to get that fender pushed back a little bit further. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and test that fender. So here we are, we've got the metal cut on the outer side. Instructions recommend about a 2-inch gap. I go about 2.5. I actually had the plastic liner that went over there. I just followed that gouge. In the back corner, again, 8.5 inches up, 3 3/8 in, mark that, and then it's to blend that angle all the way down. One thing that I find best to help is there's a bolt under here. The farther bolt, if you do about a 1/2 inch in front of that and then blend that line down to that point, it gives you plenty of room to move that plastic fender back. Got the metal pieces cut on the inner fender here, hammered back just a little bit here, cut up in here. I also got metal piece cut out that was in the way up here. The fender mount originally, what I'll do is when I test fit, I'll put the fender inside of that, and then I mark the Bushwacker fender through that hole, so I'll use that as an attachment point to strengthen it. We've trimmed the outer plastic of the inner fender liner every 3 inches. The fiber board sound deadener, I've cut that every inch and a half of the 3, so it's staggering to kind of give it relief also, but it's not an even cut straight through. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to install an L bracket right here for the Bushwacker to attach to give it some support there. I've already put the fender in place, drilled or marked and drilled all the holes going around. One thing you will find on the Excursions is the front corner of the Excursion tag on each side was in the way, and that's going to need to be trimmed. I'll do that at a later point. As far as the fender goes, what we've done is we've already added the rubber lining all the way around. The taped portion goes on the underside, so it's just the rubber to plastic side on the out. One thing I like about the newer kicks that they've done is they've installed or supplied these Torx head stainless steel with rubber gaskets. So the old kit, what it was just a single 16th screw that went through here. It was a plastic retainer with either a black or a chrome cap that went over it. I just like this look a whole lot better with the Torx stainless steel. But also one of the benefits too of their newer kicks is it has a spacer that's going to go on the back side of the nut to take up that gap between the metal and the plastic. One thing you want to be careful of though is when you're tightening, don't tighten it until the spacer is squished between the metal and the plastic. You want to give just a little bit of space so that with the heat and cold, the movement of the plastic and the metal and the rubber, it's not going to bind it in place. So just a teeny little bit of a gap so that there's a little bit of flexible movement. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add that metal bracket in the rear, and then we're going to be able to get this fender up in place and start bolting it in. Alright, now we're ready to try and install the fender. Okay, as we can see, it comes down to the front. Still a little bit loose, but I usually throw a screw in at the bottom here. What we do is we've got that gap taken up all the way across, and then you can see it comes down, follows the bottom of the fender line, and then what you can do is throw in a screw in the bottom under here. We've got that bracket, the L bracket, that was installed behind here. So what I'm going to be able to do is go look through here, get that spacing, drill through, and then we'll also use all the plastic inserts to drill all the way around and go through the plastic liner into the inner fender and hold that in place. And you see I've covered up that spot up here, but what I'm going to do is drill through and use that existing factory bolt to hold that back in place. Alright, so here we are, full install of the Bushwacker front fenders for Excursion or F250, F350. So you can see that we've got it now from the front point, bottom corner of the light, tighten all the way up along the fender. We're using their Torx stainless steel screws with rubber spacers behind, and it feeds down and ties in at the bottom down here. On the inside there's an L bracket behind this plastic pusher of it, and then we've got them spaced. For mine it worked out every 7 inches. I've got one of those that ties the Bushwacker fender to the inner factory plastic liner, and then I also reuse the upper bolt for the factory plastic liner, and then again 7 inches and 2 inches from the inside. I also throw in a screw into the bottom of the front portion of the fender and the bottom of the fender to underneath the bottom side. So that's the install. Same for all the pickups and Excursions.